Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 40th Annual Public Interest Environmental Law Conference. Thank you, panelists, for offering your insights and experiences on the topic of food waste and sustainability. My name is Kat Loden. I am a conference co-director, and I will be moderating this panel. I just have a few announcements before we get started. Don't worry if you can't see yourself. This is a Zoom webinar, so all attendees are automatically muted with your videos off. You will only be able to see the panelists. Throughout the panel, if you have any questions, please use the Q&A function rather than the chat function. All of our panelists will be giving their presentations, and then there will be a 15-minute Q&A session at the end where the panelists can answer your questions. Additionally, if there are any legal professionals in the audience who want to earn CLE credit for this panel, we will provide you with a link in a document with all the information shortly. Also in this document is information about how to make a donation to the Public Interest Environmental Law Summer Stipend Program. Our alumni board, Friends of Land, Air, Water, helps to provide stipends for students doing unpaid public interest environmental law work. If you're interested in making a donation to help students with these stipends, information on how to do so will also be in the document. Lastly, the University of Oregon is located on the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya people. Following treaties between 1851 and 1855, the Kalapuya people were dispossessed of their indigenous homeland by the United States government and forcibly removed to the Coast Reservation in Western Oregon. Today, descendants are citizens of the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community of Oregon and the Confederated Tribes of the Siletz Indians of Oregon, and continue to make important contributions in their communities at UO and across the land we now refer to as Oregon. PILC would like to acknowledge the traditional homelands of the Kalapuya people in the Willamette Valley and express our respect for the tribal nations of Oregon. I will now introduce our panelists. So Dr. Jane Ambuko is an assistant professor of horticulture at the University of Nairobi. She holds a bachelor's degree in agriculture and a master's in horticulture from the University of Nairobi, Kenya, and a PhD in agriculture science, mostly pomology and post-harvest major, from Tsukuba University in Japan. Her area of specialization is post-harvest management and perishable food crops. Her research, training, and outreach initiatives focus on technologies and innovations for post-harvest quality preservation and small-scale processing of perishable food crops. She is a champion of food loss and waste and reduction towards food and nutrition security in sustainable food systems. Dr. Patra is an interdisciplinary sociologist and currently works as the Director of Program Evaluation and Assessment, University of Maryland Extension Program. Her broad research looks at the impact of science and technology on society and vice versa. Of late, her research teachings focus on sustainability, stakeholder perspectives, socio-technical adoptions, diversity, equity, inclusion, and respect. Food waste affects her dearly, and she has been determined to join the world in reducing food waste to promote sustainability. With that, I will turn it over to our panelists.
Thank you so much, Catherine, for the introduction. I think I'm going to go fast. I have some slides to share. Let me just share my slides and then we can start. Sorry. Okay, so as I've been introduced, my name is Jane Ambuko. I'm professor of horticulture at the University of Nairobi. And so today I'm going to talk a little bit about food loss and waste and why it matters for sustainable food systems. I was told that my audience today is there are people not in my space. I'm used to talking to people in food and agriculture. And today I'm talking to attorneys. So I hope I get to so I thought I would just make this like an awareness creation kind of talk so that we look this is how I structured my presentation. I'm going to look at the basics of food loss and waste for those who do not have, do not have in-depth information about what these two terms mean and how much food we waste, why we waste it, where it is wasted, and then why reduction matters. And then I will give, if time allows, I'll give us, a short presentation on some of the ongoing efforts you're making towards food loss reduction among smallholder farmers in Kenya. So to the basics, I don't know what you understand. You've had the terms food loss and waste used interchangeably. So today I'm going to unpack it into what the different definitions that are there of the word food loss and waste. So food loss and waste, the compound word actually refers to the reduction, decrease in mass, that is quantity and quality of food, which was originally meant for human consumption. So this happens at all stages of the supply chain, right? So then we break it to food loss, because so the word is food loss and waste, but then it carries two phrases in it. There's food loss, which is the losses that happen prior to the retail stage. So this speaks to the food that is spilled, or spoiled, or gets lost along the chain, or there's reduction in quality before it reaches the retail stage. So we're talking about everything from the farm until it reaches the retail stage, before it leaves the supermarket or the market or wherever consumers go to get their food. Then there's what we call the food waste, which then refers to the food that is of good quality and is fit for human consumption, but doesn't get consumed because it is deliberately discarded. So if you look at the photos that I've shown on my slides, the first two actually speak to food loss. So the first one speaks to food that actually remains in the field, is not waste, is not harvested for many reasons. I won't go into the details, but it remains in the field, so it's upstream. Then there's food, what you can see, these are cows feeding on tomatoes. They were never meant for the cows, but this is probably sorted as having not meeting the quality standards, so it is left at the farm. And so in most cases, this photo is actually taken in one of our farms in Kenya. So this is a farmer who actually gives the waste, or rather whatever it doesn't sell, to the cows. Then the last photo there is food waste. So this happens a lot at the consumer level, in your kitchen or at the hotel. Food is discarded, but it's still, you can see what is going to the dustbin there is still fit for human consumption, but goes to waste. So that is just the distinction between the three terms. And so this is how it looks like, right? You can see this is a chain from harvest and initial handling all the way to the consumption. So food loss is what happens until the retail stage there, and then food waste is what happens after retail. Once the food arrives at the retail stage and then gets to the consumer stage. And consumer here, we're talking about either it's your household or the food service industry. Yeah, so the wastage happens because of the purchasing decisions of the consumer, or the decisions of the retailers or the traders or food service providers that then affect the decisions or the behavior of the consumer. So I hope we can understand there's a little difference between the two, because sometimes these two terms are used interchangeably, but for the sake of measurement, there has been effort to actually define and separate them, because they mean different things. So that, because as you'll see as we continue the presentation, there's effort to actually measure these two, food loss and food waste, and monitor progress towards their reduction. So how much food? So the first point was trying to just unpack the terminologies. Then we look at how much food are we wasting, or how much food are we losing. So we have always, the reports that we've quoted over the many years is the report, the FAO report of 2011. It is the most comprehensive report that has been in existence on matters food loss and waste. Basically, this report shows that we lose 30%, or a third of the food that is produced for human consumption. This actually amounts to 1.3 billion tons of food. And that graph that I'm presenting there, it shows the commodity disaggregation, to show what percentage is lost in all the different commodity types. So you can see highest losses there in fruits and vegetables. And you know why? Because they're very highly perishable. So this is the report. It's been the only comprehensive report that has been in existence that we've quoted for over the years. But recently, there have been other reports, which I'll show you. Now, so cumulatively, we're talking about 30%, right? That is the average that is given globally. But if you break this by region, you look at the different regions of the world. Yeah, so you can see on the y-axis of my graph, there's the different regions. And then on the x-axis, we're showing the out of, so for example, if I pick sub-Saharan Africa, and then you break this in the 36%, which is the losses that are reported for sub-Saharan Africa, you want to ask yourself, so the different stages of the supply chain, where do we have the highest losses? So you can see the differences in the regions. In sub-Saharan Africa, we're looking at the highest losses happening upstream, you know, at the beginning of the chain, from the farm, during handling and storage. And you'll understand later why this is important to know, where does the loss actually happen. So if you look at that, look at the sub-Saharan Africa you know, graph, and look at the, for example, the North America and Oceania graph. So the losses in both is average at 35% in America and 36% in Africa. But if you look at the distribution along the chain, you can see the difference. In Africa, it's upstream. In America, is downstream. So at the consumer level. And why is this important? The interventions that then you go in to reduce, because this is now food loss and waste. You need to know, because if I'm going to look at wastage, the interventions I'm going to do are actually about consumer behavior, because they're wasting food. 58% of the losses actually is food loss and waste is happening at the retail and consumer stage, as opposed to in the case of sub-Saharan Africa, at the consumption level, we're talking about just 5%. Maybe it's because these are regions that's food insecure, and so people do not have the luxury of wasting food. So the interventions vary. While on the other hand, you can see, you know, the upstream, you know, from the production. This is basically on farm. The interventions you want is it storage they don't have? Is it training, capacity building on how to handle food to minimize losses at that stage? So this is important. This is the stage-by-stage disaggregation of the losses. Okay, so that is the two graphs that you've seen is actually reports, FAO report of 2011. But lately there has been another report, the FAO report of 2019 and the UNEP report of 2011. So FAO is actually the custodian of the food loss index. So they've done studies over the years, and they've shown that actually now the food loss is actually 14%. That is on average globally. Yet then food waste is now estimated to be 17%. Now you look at the way it is distributed. So now it has changed. Before we thought we're wasting, I mean, we're losing more than we're wasting, but now it is evident that we're actually wasting more. More is happening between the retail and the consumer state. And then when you unpack that 17%, which is actually around 931 million metric tons of food is wasted. If you unpack it further, you see 61% of that 931 million metric tons is actually at the household, in your kitchen, at the service, in your mostly at the household. So that actually tells you that the kind of intervention we need to do to reduce food loss and waste in this case is actually behavior change, because people do not actually understand the impact of their actions. So it's very important that we understand that. So the third question we're asking, so we've understood what, you know, the basics, what is food loss and waste, and then where is the food loss happening, food loss and waste happening, and then the next question is, what is causing all this food loss and waste? What are the drivers? What are the causes of food loss and waste? So I will not, time doesn't allow me to unpack all the, you know, the details of the drivers. But I'm going to cite a report by FAO again in 2014, which actually divides these causes into three. There's what you call the micro level causes. Now, these are causes, losses that happen because of individual actions. So at the bottom of this diagram, you can see, you know, the little cubes. Those are individual actions. Action is either the farmer themselves, the transporter, the trader, the consumer, the processors. So they're actions or lack of actions that contribute to losses or wastage of food. Then there's what you call the meso level causes. This has to do with the systemic issues, organizational issues. Maybe it's how the supply chain actors are organized. Are the traders properly linked to the farmers? Are the the traders properly linked to the let's say the processors? So poor organization of the chain actors contribute to losses. So you see, this is ultimately it goes down to the micro level. Yeah, so it will look like when you look at for example, if you go to the farm and you find that there's food that is lost at the farm, it is wasting away on the farm. It could be because the farmer doesn't have cold storage, but it also could be because the trader who is supposed to pick this produce did not come on time. So the produce goes to it. So that has to do with poor organization of the chain actors or other organizational issues that will contribute to the losses. Then we have what you call the macro level issues. Now, these are more higher level factors, institutional issues, policy issues, policies that will then impact the meso level and the micro level causes. So, for example, it could be about a government policy. I need the farmer at the ground requires maybe cold storage, right? And I'm speaking for Africa because these are challenges that face smallholder farmers in Africa. They need cold storage, but there's no cold storage if there's no electricity, unless there's ability to actually use solar. Yes. If you talk about conventional cold room, you cannot, even if you can afford a cold room, if the government or there's a policy towards maybe rural electrification hasn't been put in place. So even if I can afford a cold room, I'm doing large scale farming, but there's no electricity. See, this is beyond me. As an individual, I may not be able to, fit electricity on my own farm. So those are issues at that level, but they affect the micro level, the individual actors. So that is how the loss or the causes are organized broadly. And you can see when you unpack this stage by stage, again, this is quoting a recent report there by Delgado, showing that the causes at the various stages from production all the way to the consumer level. So they are, like I said, for the micro level, it means these are actions. Actually, if the individual actors could actually, change something, maybe the way they handle the produce, if they could actually invest in some technology, then they would make the difference. But then again, we said you could want to invest in a technology, yes, but then there are other factors that need you to invest in that technology that somebody else higher in the chain needs to do, right? So this is just a pictorial. These are pictures captured here and there in the field. You can see all these drivers, factors that would contribute to losses ultimately. You can see how food is harvested, how it is handled, how it is packaged, all these, if you unpack them, you look at the previous slide, we looked at individual, factors at the various stages. So if you look at this, all these are poor practices. I just picked these photos to show these are poor practices that contribute to food loss and food waste. And then if you look at the lower part of the slide, now this is at the service industry. These are like buy one, get one free, or buy one for, these are campaigns. Like you had in my intro, in my definitions, we talked about the decisions of the service people in the food service, which affect the decisions of the consumer. So if you see this kind of campaign, buy one and get one free, yes, you look, it's a good deal. So you buy and go for the extra burger, not because you need to have it, but because it's a deal. It sounds like a good deal. Then you look at the ugly looking carrots. You as a consumer, you want a perfect carrot. So these carrots, though they're not, have no issues nutritionally, they won't be harvested because you, the consumer, actually want a perfect carrot. But these are just as good as the perfect carrot. It's just that they are misshaped. They have a bad shape because of some practices in the field. Then there's the whole thing. I saw Patra is going to talk a little bit about, the whole thing with the labeling that actually affects some of us. Actually, until I got to learn more about labeling and how it affects my decision, I would actually throw away food as long as it says best before. Today is March 5th. And if I see it's labeled best before 5th of March, I'll toss it away. But actually, I don't want to preempt the next presentation, but it's not like it is bad, but it's just not best, right? But most of us, we are confused about this labeling. There's a lot of labeling from the manufacturers: best before, used before, expires. All these labels have actually contributed to wastage because people do not understand what these labels mean. So sometimes you throw food that is still good for consumption, but the label, simply because the label is misleading. Right. So what does it all mean? Why does it matter, the food loss and waste? One, it matters because it impacts on food and nutrition security. Studies by FAO show that actually the food that is lost every year can feed up to 1.6 billion people globally, okay? So basically what you're saying is that if we could recover some of that food, yes, if we deliberately make efforts to reduce that food loss and wastage, then remember the population is going up. By 2050, will be over 9.5 billion. And how are we going to feed the 9.5 billion people? We may need to produce more. But how do we produce more, yet we lose it? We're wasting food. So actually, food loss, waste impacts on food and nutrition security for now and for the future. Money-wise, we're losing money. It's actually estimated that food loss and waste it amounts to, in terms of monetary terms, it is up to 700, the data I'm quoting is actually FAO data, up to $750 billion is actually, is what the food loss and waste annually amounts to. So if we can reduce that food, we will actually positively impact, especially the farmers, because if you look at who loses in this whole supply chain when we lose food is actually the farmer, right? So if we could reduce food loss and food waste, actually there will be more money because this is a study by the World Bank that actually we can put more money in the pockets of the smallholder farmers. Then in terms of environment, yeah, it's actually estimated that up to 8% of the greenhouse gases that we're concerned with come from food loss and waste. So you can see the little graphs that are projected on the extreme right of the graph of my slide. It actually, there's evidence that if food loss and waste were a country, it would be third only to China and second. The highest emitter of greenhouse gases is China, and then followed by US, and then food loss and waste would be number 3 in that order, right? So by reducing food loss and waste, actually we contribute to the efforts towards mitigating against climate change, because we can minimize or reduce the greenhouse gases. But of course, again, by wasting food, we actually not using the limited or the inelastic production resources, land, water, energy, and all the inputs that are going to food, producing food that is wasted. That is not sustainable. So what we're saying is that a sustainable food system will require us to address the problem of food loss and waste. There cannot be a sustainable food system when we are wasting, using limited production resources to produce food that 30% and now 31% of it is either lost or wasted. So because of that, I'm sure we're all familiar with the Sustainable Development Goals, the 17 of them. There's the Sustainable Development Goal 12, which is actually about sustainable consumption and production. So there's a target to have the food loss and waste by the year 2030. That is target 12.3. So this has been cascaded to regional levels, regions where each region has its target. But the global target is that we have undertaken, or we have committed to reduce food loss and waste by the year 2030. So we're talking about in the next 8 years or so, we are supposed to have reduced food loss and waste by half. I don't know where we are at, because one of the things we don't have is data to monitor progress towards that, okay? So how do we get to that target? So there is a call to action, and I think this is part of why I'm here today. I said I'm gonna change this into an advocacy talk. There's a call to action by all. We all have a role, creating awareness, committing ourselves to reduce food loss and waste. And so all these are the efforts that we've got to do. So all of us have a target, I have a role to do in all this, what I put, the points I put on the right, these are measures that are seen as what needs to be done to reach that target, the target 12.3 of halving food loss and waste by the year 2030. So we all have a role to play. And now we have the International Day of Awareness on Food Loss and Waste, 29th of September. Every year, people actually, there are events to create awareness about this problem and to highlight or showcase efforts that are going towards reduction of food loss and waste. So, having said that, there's action for all of us. I'm gonna pick something that we're doing. I said I'm gonna highlight something that we're doing as University of Nairobi, working with the smallholder farmers to address this problem of food loss and waste. And we are supported by the Rockefeller Foundation. There is a project by Rockefeller called the Yieldwise. So in their strategy, they looked at 4 points, four complementary efforts that have to work together to realize food loss and waste reduction, especially among smallholders. So there's an issue of technologies, making the users, the technologies, first of all, available and accessible to the farmers, to the supply chain actors. There's need to link these actors, especially the farmers, to markets, because one of the key major reasons why a lot of food we saw, I said 36% of wastage losses actually happen down upstream in sub-Saharan Africa because of issues of market. There's need to finance, the needs for finance to access technology, finance to develop technologies, and then there's need to actually organize farmers. You realize that in our part of the world, the farmers are actually smallholder, farming on 2 acres or less. So these people are not able to actually invest in technologies as individuals, or they cannot actually demand for services like training. But when they're organized in groups, then they are able to, pool resources together and invest in technologies like storage technologies as a group. So using that strategy, the Yieldwise strategy, I'm gonna share some work that we've been doing that is ongoing, working with mango farmers to just address the food loss and waste in the mango supply chain. So we're calling this the zero loss centers. This is how we want to make it look, how we want it to be, that no mangoes that goes to a center that is equipped with simple cold storage technologies and simple small scale processing technologies goes to waste. So this is what we're doing. So why cold storage? Cold storage because fruits like mango and vegetables, they're highly perishable. When you harvest them without cold storage, they're going to go to waste if the traders do not come. And that is common. So what you're seeing in the middle graph, this is for many smallholder farmers, that is what is called, that is like a store. These mangoes down there have been harvested and they're waiting for the trader. If the trader never comes, those mangoes will turn into the graph. The photo on the third photo, going to waste. And this is common. So first of all, without access to cold storage, one, the farmers, the fruits go to waste. And two, the traders actually take advantage to exploit the farmer because you take what they offer you, because even if you refuse, it's gonna go to waste anyway. So with this lack of storage, the farmers actually exploited by traders. I'll tell you, for example, a piece of mango, a very good looking mango, like now we are in mango season in Kenya, a piece goes for like 3 cents. The same one will retail at 10 cents or more in the urban centers. So basically, of course, there's logistics involved, but the farmers are really exploited by the traders because they don't have anything. They do not have storage. They don't have capacity to add value to this food. So when you harvest, the traders come and they know you'll take the price they'll give you, or else you go to all the mangoes go to waste anyway. And this is not just mango. The same applies to the other perishable fruits and vegetables. So that's why cold storage is critical and key. So what we've been doing at the University of Nairobi, working with support from some of our development partners, is to actually introduce low-cost cold storage alternatives to these farmers who are organized in groups. So we have introduced, like off the grid. Like I said, sometimes the rural areas don't have electricity. And so if you don't have electricity, what happens? So we have the evaporative cooling technologies. We've tried to introduce this to the farmers organized in groups. We're also introducing solar powered cooling technologies. So with this kind of technologies, they're able to actually aggregate their produce. They're actually able to store. You can see on the in the graph there, these are produce that is can be kept for a few more days as they wait for traders. So they are not under pressure to sell. So basically what you say, when they have this kind of technologies, they are able to aggregate and meet the quantities that the traders want, and they can consistently supply the kind, the quantities or the quality that is demanded by the traders. Secondly, because they are organized in groups, they are able to negotiate as a group. They can negotiate for better prices from the traders. Of course, that is still hard because the traders, they're very cunning, because when they see these farmers organized in groups, they shun them. They go and buy the cheaper fruits from those who are not organized. So if these groups work for many farmers, then they are able to negotiate for better prices from the traders. In ultimately, there's no pressure to sell, because if you do not sell, you have cold storage to return your produce to. Then whatever is not sold at zero loss centers, either it doesn't meet the requirements for the fresh market, or it is not it doesn't meet the requirements for the fresh market, or is overripe or about to get spoiled, it can actually be processed. So what we have here, what we've introduced to these smallholder farmers, these are mango farmers, but they can do with these facilities more than just mango, because it can be used for other perishable produce. So with this kind of small scale facilities for small scale processing, these are dryer, and then this also just very simple equipment for making wet processing. There's drying and then there's wet processing. So they can dry the fruits. They can also make other products from the mango. So basically it's converting the highly perishable commodities into shelf-stable products like this. These are some of the products that actually we've been able to train our organized farmers to make. So juices, they can make candies from mango, they can make jam, they can make wine, is high-end product, which is still just under training. So, but basically what you're saying, these are high-value shelf-stable products which can be made from perishable fruits and vegetables. Therefore, you extend the availability to the consumer, but also you reduce losses at the farm. So this is what a zero loss center looks like. Produce, when it comes, it's either we use sorting technology, pre-cooling using this evaporative cooling. You have your cold storage, which can be used for longer term storage. We use this in combination with technologies for extending the shelf life of the produce, so that you extend the marketing period. Then you can transform them into shelf-stable products, like I've just shown in the previous slide. And then for it to be called zero loss center, what do you do with the waste? Whatever comes out of byproducts of processing, we are now working with the people from the feed industry to use, like for mango, we're using the kernel or the peel in feed. So that actually what it basically says, the produce, any produce that comes to the zero loss center is either sold fresh or is transformed into shelf-stable products, the wet processed products or the dry products, and the byproducts of processing can actually be used in animal feed. So that's why we're calling them zero loss center. Of course, it's a concept that we've tried, and of course, it's not yet perfect, but at least we have shown how it can work in mango. This can be used in other commodities. So finally, this is what you call the hierarchy, what we need to do. So starting from the top, we want to prevent food loss and waste by all those measures we've talked about. And if food does not, food that is not used for example, in your institution, in your house, it can actually be distributed. So whatever is not fit for human consumption can go into feed. Whatever does not go into feed, the next level is it can be used in compost, composting into manure or other energy sources, right? Then the worst or the least preferred option for food is actually disposal. So we want to ensure whatever we do everything starting from prevention. That is the best. But then these others are options. But the worst that we must avoid at all costs is putting food in the dustbin, because I've already explained what that amounts to. So when we reduce food loss, I will not unpack this, but just food loss, when we hit our target 12.3, this is this I borrowed from a report by World Resource Institute that reducing food loss impacts positively on all the other SDGs. Yes, so this shows how food loss and waste reduction, it is in itself an end, but I mean, a good thing to do. But while at it, we're actually impacting positively on the other 16 SDGs, right? So finally, this is the call to action, that we need to stop food loss and food waste for the people and for the planet. And we can all be involved. We all have a role to play in this effort towards reduction of food loss and waste. Thank you for your attention. Patra, you're muted. You're muted.
I believe she's just restarting her screen, so I'm going to give her a second.
Yeah, this is how technology sometimes fails us.
I'm trying to see if it's on our end, if somehow you were muted, but your screen doesn't say mute, so.
Jane, I just clicked ask to unmute.
It's not Jane's.
Oh, sorry. Let me try. Yeah, it's not showing that she's muted. Let me try making co-host. Try now.
It says that you're muted on that, so try unmuting your phone. Your screen says that your phone's muting. It does say that you're using your phone audio, but your phone is muted.
Yeah, now it just says connecting to audio. So if you click connect on your phone, it should work. We still can't hear you.
Love Zoom. I might ask Dr. Ambuko some of the questions and see if we can bring her back. Dr. Ambuko, are you still there?
Yes, I am.
Okay, I think I'm going to ask you a couple of the questions that we got in the chat, and hopefully Dr. Patra can fix whatever is happening on her computer.
Yeah, I've tried to answer some of the questions.
Okay, so I will ask you a couple of them. What can individuals be doing to further these issues?
Yeah, like I said, I think we all, just starting from yourselves. I mean, from myself as an individual, actually, after getting, because before I didn't also know much about food loss and waste until I got engaged in activity about food loss and waste, is when my own awareness was raised. And so I started to, start to change some of my behaviors, because my kitchen was a place of a lot of food waste. So now I'm more aware. So at individual level, we look at the losses. Now the latest report actually shows a lot of losses at the consumer level, at the household level being high. So we can actually make a difference. Patra is back. Patra, I hope your mic is working.
Oh, can you all hear me now?
Yep,
Yes.
you're perfect.
Oh, I'm so sorry, guys. When I was about to speak, something happened and I was like thrown away completely. I'm sorry about that. And thank you all for your patience. I guess I can go now. Okay, awesome. First of all, thank you so much, Catherine, for this amazing job and inviting me here. I'm really honored to be presenting with Dr. Ambuko here. And I do cover a little bit of what she said, but my research is mostly in the area of date labeling. So I would take that diversion after one point. But let me get started with the definition that we have been talking about food waste. By FAO, which is the decrease in the quantity and quality of food resulting from decisions and actions by retailers, food service providers, and consumers. And by reducing food waste, as we saw, it is beneficial for both people and planet. But the true scale of food waste has not been understood of late, which was done by UNEP in 2021. And as we know, FAO has this sustainable development goal, which is aiming to halve the food waste by 2030. Sure. Yes. So as we were talking about the difference between waste and loss, I'm just not going into the details, but just to give some idea, food waste is more has a human angle to it and human thinking and psychology behind the waste rather than loss, where we have certain conditions which is beyond the capacity of human beings. For example, adverse weather conditions, and then pace, other problems during transportation and distribution. But the waste is more at retail, household, restaurant, and consumer sector where this human element is there and which is much higher than the loss. So I just got some fun facts for you guys. So did you know that 30 to 40% of food in America goes to landfill? So whatever we produce, kind of half of that is going to the landfill. Every person, and if we put that in perspective, every person in America is throwing more than 650 average sized apple right into the garbage. That's the kind of amount that we are talking about here. And Americans waste more food than any other countries in the world. So here are some statistics. As Dr. Ambuko was also talking, FAO reports that 931 million tons are wasted every year. And if we talk about US, we have about 133 billion pounds of food, which is worth $161 billion is wasted every year. That is the amount we are talking about. And the reasons, of course, there are fresh produce that deviates from what is looking like optimal. For example, these food products, they do not have any issues with their nutritional value, but they do not look normal. So if we think about our practices in a grocery store, as soon as we walk in, we try to pick the best looking ones for us, and we make a judgment there. And it's just human tendency. So all these guys are left out without being used. So we do not have that inclusion policy working there with the vegetables and fruits. That is one. The other one is the food date label. And we are doing research right now that I'm going to share. And also the leftover or unused food in both service sectors like restaurants and even households. And the plate waste. It's entirely on us because as human beings, we tend to think that we probably can eat this much and we take it. And at the end, we are unable to finish that, and that goes in the garbage. So that is plate waste, which is on us again. So now let me focus on the date labeling. So the date labeling in the US are inconsistent, not regulated, and not science-based. However, when we go and ask people, do you get influenced by the date when you're buying products in the grocery store? Everybody says yes, they do look at that label, but that doesn't say anything. Except for infant formula, none of the food products is regulated in the US. And that widely varies across jurisdictions, states, brands, food products. So that what that means is in the grocery store, you might find different labels, date labels in the same product from two different companies. So let's say the one brand of milk says sell by, the other brand of milk says best buy. So which do not tally. And you will be surprised to know that about 50 such different types of date labels are currently in use in the US. So this non-uniformity and misinterpretation leads people to waste food, because when it is totally edible and you just see that date label and think that it is the indicator of a food safety issue, and you think that it's not safe to eat and you throw it away. And that's what I showed in my first slide, when a grocery store worker is just taking big boxes of foods and fruit and vegetables and just throwing it in the landfill. So that led us to do a study globally to understand what kind of research and trends are there in the world. And we conducted a cytometric study, which was published in 2009. And that garnered quite a lot of social media attention. And we were really encouraged to do more research in that area. So we formed a multidisciplinary team with different expertise, because we wanted to first understand and establish the science behind food date labels, and then wanted to systematically approach that through community intervention. So we conducted a study among multi-stakeholders in the farm to fork continuum. And Maryland, Delaware, Virginia, and Washington, DC, those are the places that we conducted our study. So we basically first wanted to have a needs assessment to understand what the stakeholder needs are, and then systematically approach it. Thus, so the study was conducted between February and April 2021. We surveyed about 400 people and got 123 responses. The respondents were 18 years and older, and they were from different sections of the population. And we had about 23 questions asking about the demographic information, their educational, occupational background, knowledge, attitude, perception, and practices on date label, and how that contribute to food waste, and the proposed solutions, how we can handle and address the confusion. So I will be sharing the results, but of course not of all the 23 questions, because this is under a publication now, but I will touch upon some of the factors that are there. In terms of demographics, we had about 51% self-identifying as consumers, 15% scientists, 11% students, 8% from food service industry, 6% farmers, 5% government and policymakers, and the remaining 4% from extension educator retailers. So age group, the most dominating one was 25 to 44 years age. 34% was between 45 and 64. In terms of gender, we had more female respondents than male. In terms of race, also we had predominantly white, but then we had 13% Asian, 6% Black, and 12% chose not to mention that. Education, we had quite a presence of doctorate degree holders, 37%. We had 33 masters, 23 bachelors, and then 7% high school degrees. So we asked this question, what do you think are the ways that food is wasted? And as you can see here, food that is close or beyond the date label hit the bullseye with 22%. Then throwing away visibly spoiled food, of course, it's 16%. Throwing leftovers in the household, 14%. Fresh produce not of normal look. So all the parameters that we are talking in the beginning also came out with our survey results. So just to tease out the understanding of the difference between different date labels and what people thought about that, we asked them, what do you think is the difference between different types of date labels like use by, best by, sell by, best before? And as I did get a huge amount of qualitative data, and I just chose some of them to show here. So 34% thought they are the same. It's not a difference. 66% thought they are different. And this is what they explain. Use by should be used by the date. Sell by and best by, you have a few extra days past date, which is not true. Use by means expire after that. No. All are about product quality except sell by, which is product safety. Again, no. And somebody said, only the phantom knows. We don't know the difference between these labels. And this is a chart diagram. We use the R statistics to generate this graph, but I'm not going to explain all of it just due to time constraints, which basically this graph says, what is the difference or what is the association of your educational degree with the confusion, which says no, none. We did not find any statistical significance between the responses or how people are getting confused with their educational degree. Then we asked, what ways can one address the date label confusion? And as you can see, people need more uniformity in date labels, more clarity on the labels, then scientific evidence. Do we have any scientific basis on these labels? Targeted educational campaign, government regulations, which brings you guys into forefront, and then free mobile phone app with all the information, so that you can have all the information on your fingertips about what the date label is and what it means. So from our study, we found that consumers are still confused about the date label, but they're really interested for the scientific evidence to come out. And as I was just saying, even if we had a huge number, which is 37% of doctorate degrees, still it is evident that education label doesn't say anything about your confusion. They are also confused about the date labels. Of course, reducing food waste will contribute to the food security and can address hunger, and besides help the environment and promote sustainability. What can we do about that? we will make the date label uniform. Some of the organizations and FDA, even they tried coming up with 2 streamlined date labels and tried to say that we will reduce all of that, but just bring it into 2. But it's not mandatory. It's not being imposed. It's not being adopted by a lot of grocery stores. So they still use those kind of date labels, which has been historically present in the US. Tracking the food waste as consumer level is challenging. For example, if I do some plate waste and all, and I throw it away, I do not report it to anybody. So same goes for all the households. In that case, community intervention using modern technology and targeted education would be ideal. And we can have planned purchases and knowledge to preserve the food longer, and having legal solutions would be great. I tried getting some of the legal solutions, or some of the states have implemented some legislation in some form or the other. It's again, is not uniform, but at least it's getting noticed. There is Congresswoman Pingree who has tried to have this bill on Food Date Labeling Act in 2021. So we don't know what is happening to that, but we are hopeful that something might come out of it. We are also in our own way trying to reduce that by systematically approaching and developing scientific evidence on the quality of the food products, and also design some interventions in the community level. It will definitely save us money, save the environment, promote sustainability, reduce global emission, and cleaner energy, and food insecurity. So it's almost an appeal that I would like to do to all of you. Like, before you throw any food, whether it's packaged on your plate or any other thing, you need to ask yourself, can I still eat it? Can I preserve it in some way and eat it later? Can it be donated? If I'm not eating it, do I think that maybe this can be eaten by somebody else? Can I buy less cooked Lays? And for you guys especially, can you bring legal changes and it can be regulated, and we can save some food and money in their case. Okay, thank you very much. I know I'm sorry about all that technological issues, but that was my study and our research. And this is my email address in case you would like to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you both so much. No worries about the technical issues. It's happened to us all. I'm going to ask you both a couple of questions from the chat. If anybody else has any questions, feel free to drop those into the chat now, or the question answer, function. But so for both of you, what are some of the biggest barriers in sustainability that you've seen with your experience?
The biggest barrier is the mentality to change. Change is really hard when we can say a lot of things, but may not implement that. So when I was telling in the end, it's kind of an appeal, almost an appeal. I'm really desperate to say people that please think before you are wasting food or throwing it away. Try to understand that date label. It's just a suggestion. Traditionally, we didn't have any date labels. It came in somewhere along the way. So as human beings, we have those strong senses that we use. When it is visibly spoiled, we have molds and other things, you throw it away, it's perfectly fine. You can compost it. But if you see it's perfectly fine, if you see that you can still use it or even donate it, please do so. So the barrier would be not thinking and not susceptible to change and adapting.
Okay, Dr. Ambuko, do you have anything to add to that one? You are muted, if you were.
Okay, yeah, technology. Yeah, so I think I would say that really, like Patra says, for me, it's when we start talking about the fact that food loss in West is something that is affecting sustainability of our food systems. It's something that we know. It's not like we don't know. We have even set targets. But the question is how, for me, I honestly cannot understand why there's not such urgency to address the problem, because we see it. You go everywhere, you see food that is there, and it's such an irony that in some of the countries, like my country, while food is going to waste, there are people who are actually starving. We see images of people actually dying, they haven't had a meal. And you wonder, for example, it is actually a question, you remember the hierarchies you talked about, donation of food. How hard is it to donate the food? Why? I mean, because it's these images, I don't know, maybe you guys in the US, you don't have that. All the time you see people actually went without a meal. Yet people in some other regions, food is going to waste. So it's a question of putting measures to actually distribute this food. It is possible. It can be done. It just needs the goodwill. Yes, especially from the people who have the response. But of course, I don't want to also sound like it is only government and the other people. Like Patra said, even I as an individual, I can also do something. Before I throw that food in the dustbin, I think now before it didn't occur to me how it's a serious match until now. Before I put food in the dustbin, I think, who can I give it to? The security person I might get, and not just because, so you can actually donate in your own small way. You can do something. So I think that's the question I was answering earlier, Kate, when you called. I said, we can all do something in our own small way before we look at the bigger interventions from government or from the governor or whatever. We have something to do as individuals.
Absolutely. One of the other questions kind of related to this. So most of the attendee says most of the food banks in our area will not take donations past the use by or sell by date, which is true for, I think, most of the states. Is there a way to target education about labeling to food banks?
That's a wonderful question. And yes, absolutely. Whoever asked this question is absolutely right. The food banks will not get that donation. So it will be like churches and other organizations, they have those policies, like they can still take it. We were trying to do this targeted food drive in our university. And University Pantry actually came up with a good community intervention posters and other things, and said, this date label probably doesn't mean anything. If you think it's spoiled and you see that it's spoiled, use your senses and throw it. So they came up with a space designated to have all the food products, which says best by, we use by, whatever those date labels are, but they are on open cans, they are there. So with the note that this is still edible, you still can eat it, it's not spoiled, so use it. And we were being successful in doing that, and people just take it and eat it. Because as Dr. Ambuko is saying, there are a lot of hungerness out there. There are a lot of food redistribution we can do in this world. We do have those big problems that goes into the nerves of the society, as you can say. But still, before we find those ways, we can still on our own do some of those things. We can, let's say, organize the pantry, you contact the pantry and have that section saying that even if it says best by, use by, whatever, we still have these products for you. And it's edible. And the same goes for all the universities, places. It's just, takes one person to organize that, one individual to think and bring in people and policy changes. All that.
Okay, another question from the chat. Countries like France require grocery stores to donate food that will be thrown out to shelters. Some officials argued that donating this food is a safety hazard. Do you think that we can use these results to demand policy change locally in other countries, or do we need to wait for more results?
Mm-hmm. So if I understood correctly, they're asking if there are some problems with grocery stores donating it to somewhere, and if they can do it, something about it. Oh yeah, absolutely. In Maryland, there is a nonprofit organization, I'm just forgetting the name right now. They reached out to me before some time, and they are I think it's, I'm sorry, it's reuse or second use or something similar. So what their job is, they are collecting all these ugly looking food and the food that the grocery store is saying that they are not going to keep on their shelves in the store. They're collecting all that and they're taking it and redistributing it to people. And some community kitchens. In the churches, there are a lot of kitchens where they need those food products or the fresh produce and the vegetables to do something to feed people, those who come to eat there. So let's say you see there is a produce and there is this date label. It says that you need to consume by this date, which again means nothing to me. You can cook it. You just take a cauliflower, for example, you cook it and feed to people. When you cook it, you are, means all the germs and everything are dying in that process when you cook. They reach the boiling point. I'm not saying it's a hazardous thing and you cook it and it's going to be good. No, it's already, there is no issues with it. It's perfectly fine. But if you cook, you make sure that nothing, you don't have any Listeria, E. coli, or any of that in there. And you're just distributing, and people have been eating that. I do that in my house. I'm still alive. I'm doing okay. So we need to think like how individually we can contribute. And we do have organizations, nonprofits, those who are doing that in a bulk way. They're just going to the grocery store. They have, let's say, some laws. Again, that comes back to you guys, rules and regulations in a state saying that you cannot have on your shelf these things. So they don't have any other choices but to throw that down the garbage. But then we have these middlemen who can collect that and redistribute it. So, yeah.
Yeah, you're muted, Kat.
Yeah, I figured that out after the fact.
Yeah, but the other thing I was just going to add on for the retailers, because you have seen the recent study by the UNEP, shows that there's a lot of wastage happening from retail to to the food service and then the household. One of the things that I've seen it in the US and I saw it when I was studying in Japan is what they do is that when food is approaching the expiry or sell by, they actually have the price. And when we were students, we didn't used to buy the expensive food. We'd actually wait for the half price, and that's a way. So you actually helping the poor students to access food and reducing food loss and waste. I see this in the developed countries, but it's something that hasn't peaked in the you find actually food really going to waste on the shelf. Yet it could, if you just have the price, it will fly off the shelf because there are people who may not afford the very fresh, good food, but when you have the price, everybody can afford it, the students especially. That's how we used to eat as poor students studying abroad. So I think that's something that can be one way the retailers can do to contribute to food waste at the retail stage.
Yeah, it looks like we are at time. So I want to thank you both very much for coming to this panel and participating. I know I learned a lot. I'm sure all the attendees did as well. And this whole thing will be posted to YouTube eventually. So anybody who missed it will also be able to see it. Attendees, if you have any other questions, feel free to send them to me at askpilk@gmail.com, and I will do my best to forward them on to the presenters. So thank you both very much. And attendees, thank you for participating.
Awesome.
Thank you for having us.
Everyone.
It was a great honor. Bye.
Thanks, Catherine. Thanks, everyone.